doesn't really accomplish anything besides being its own reward, but I guess it fits the vibes of a world of violence.
Oh, it doesn't accomplish anything besides being its own reward? How about it creates stakes like your video's about? We got a hot take, and I'm going to be very interested to see what you have to say about this, chat. Is Wano, is it bad? Or more specifically, why didn't Wano have stakes? Now, I personally love Wano. I loved Wano. I felt like it was like the climax of so many things that we built up for from so many arcs. But also, I am not a critiquer by any means. So I'm going to watch. We're going to see if we disagree or agree with this. So let's see what he has to say.
One of the most common critiques I heard was that the arc lacked stakes. We knew that if Luffy lost, bad things would happen. But a story has to do more than that to make the danger feel real. And for a lot of us, it didn't. Whether you felt the stakes is part of your personal experience.
I personally felt the stakes. I felt like they were the highest.
Didn't have a problem? Awesome. But for those of us who did, I want to analyze why.
So they got a problem with Wano.
Lack of emotional investment, not enough deaths, but I don't think those tell the full story. If we take a close look and compare the structure of Wano to all the other major arcs, we'll find that some key pieces are missing. Pieces that are necessary for the kind of story One Piece wants to tell. Pieces that are fundamental to how we get invested in stories. So today we're going to break down what
we're telling Oda how to write his story. Also,
are. Hopefully, whether you love Wano or hate it, this will help us all understand the arc a little bit. But before we can talk about what Wano is missing, let's establish why I think the common explanations fall short. There are 3 of them that I usually hear, but I think all 3 have issues.
Okay.
1, weekly reading makes you dumb, and the arc is actually fine. And yeah, that's true. It does make you dumb. We've all fallen for it.
Chat, do you agree? Does reading weekly make you dumb?
The weekly mindset is one of reactionary hyperbole. But what if you reread the arc and...
Because I feel like I've never been a part of the weekly like manga or anything. But I do feel like when you're a part of something that just comes out, everybody is extremely opinionated instantly. Reactionary takes. Because like how many times do people just have like such a die-hard take? They're like 100% confirmed this is the worst thing ever. And then they think about it and they reread it and they're like, oh wait. Maybe I was just impatient.
2. The Straw Hats needed to be more personally invested. I'm not sure it's true that they weren't. The raid kicked off with Luffy getting mad on Tama's behalf, and he definitely cared about Kinemon and Momo.
True.
But beyond that, while investment in the sidecast is definitely important, I don't think it's strictly necessary for stakes. I wasn't especially invested in Skypia's sidecast, not compared to Wano.
That's a very fair point, but also I was extremely invested in every single side character in the Akazaya 9. Especially after hearing their backstory. I love them so much. These guys, this gang, I feel like the Toei anime probably did them way dirtier than the manga did. They just kind of, a lot of times, they were the gang that got the bad pacing. And I love Tama, and I felt so bad for her.
I wasn't especially invested in Skypia's sidecast, not compared to Wano.
Personally.
And I don't think Luffy was either. But I still felt the stakes when Enel was trying to blow the whole place up. 3. More characters needed to die. The thing is, Wano has the most confirmed deaths of named characters out of any arc.
Damn.
Seriously, here's the list. But
let's take a look at the list. I've always felt like adding more deaths in One Piece would have made every arc the stakes higher. So I don't think this is anywhere near a dog on Wano.
Admittedly, there's a debate to be had about whether these characters are important enough or if some of their deaths were too rushed. Even so, I find this argument insufficient because it's One Piece. Oda gave the Grim Reaper a rubber scythe.
Exactly! But also, this is one of those things that you're cooking too fast on.
It's One Piece. Oda gave the...
Trust me, the Grim Reaper is gonna be related somehow, man. Like, why is everybody so quick to just throw this guy, like, just throw this, to write this off as, oh, it's just Zoro didn't die when he was close to death. Like, no, this is definitely connected somehow in the future. 100% is. Was Zoro's King of the Hell analogies as well, right?
The Grim Reaper a rubber scythe. Alabasta and Eni's lobby are full of fake-outs, not real deaths, and I definitely felt the stakes during those. These arguments don't work for me, but they're still valid. If you think one of them explains your experience, great. But for me, if earlier arcs didn't need deaths for stakes, then they had something else. And maybe that something is the piece that Wano is missing.
Let's see.
And to find out what exactly that piece is, we have to go back to the beginning. No, not Romance Dawn. A little later than that. To understand how One Piece arcs usually function, there's no better arc to analyze than Alabasta. It's the blueprint for the major arc. If there's anything fundamental to how One Piece arcs usually work, you can probably find it in Alabasta. In particular, it's the first to be long enough that Luffy failing can fit in its structure. So let's take a closer look at that failure. There's actually two of them. As the crew escapes Rain Base, Luffy stays behind to fight Crocodile, and gets cheesed by a Logia. That means Crocodile can continue toward Alubarna, to take control as the Civil War climaxes. But Luffy isn't done yet. He shows up at the palace in his strongest
I'm gonna
form
hear
ever.
him out. Let me hear him out.
Water Luffy. But even with a counter to the Logia power, Crocodile's a tough reptile. He dries Luffy out and leaves for the crypt, so Robin can read the poneglyph and locate the ancient weapon. Do you see the trick? It's not just that Luffy loses, it's that every time Luffy loses, Crocodile's plan moves one step further. Stakes come from two things: risk of failure and consequences of failure.
Okay, so I guess his point is gonna be that because every time Luffy beat or Kaido beat Luffy, there wasn't stakes because Kaido didn't have a bigger overarching goal. If that's what he's implying here, that doesn't really make sense because Kaido, he did have an overarching goal. It was to join Big Mom and to take the One Piece. What was Kaido supposed to do? Beat Luffy and then immediately go for the One Piece? Like, nah, he wanted to chill and drink and probably sleep it off and then go for the One Piece tomorrow or something. Kaido's goal, fight and die. I mean, yeah, that's his character, dude. And Kaido was gonna nuke the capital. That's also true.
Stakes come from two things: risk of failure
But
and
now, according to this timestamp, he's gonna explain how stakes work, so let's find out.
consequences of failure. If a story never shows failure, you don't trust that it's a possibility. And if a story shows failure but doesn't give it consequences, then why should you care? But if we have both, then the danger feels real. Because it's not just telling you that failure can happen and would be bad, but showing you. The consequence should fit the story. In a sports manga, losing the tournament is enough. But when pirates are putting their lives on the line, you need some death, and that's why the story gave us Marineford. But even then, I think most of us can agree that One Piece needs a few more deaths.
Yeah.
I'm tired of the Will of P.
We can all agree we're tired of the Will of P and that a few extra deaths would have hit harder and been super sad. We can all agree on that.
The ultimate consequence, but that makes it the most generic one. It can happen in any story. That's not a bad thing. Many great shonen arcs are built on villains who functionally want to kill everyone. That structure makes death the main consequence available. But if we try other structures, we might unlock other consequences, or even other kinds of stories. And One Piece rules at that. Crocodile does want to kill the Straw Hats, he even wants to blow up the capital, but he also has a goal. Not just a motivation he can give speeches on, but a set of tasks to accomplish in order. It might not be a permanent consequence like death, but we're seeing the villain do something we didn't want them to do because the protagonist failed. A negative consequence to failure that's unique to the arc, and that gives it stakes regardless of how silly it is for Pell to survive the bomb. One Piece arcs are built on this principle. Let Luffy fail and let something bad happen. Let something change. Let us enter a new section of
So you wanted the exact same plot as every other arc? Is like the common argument here, I guess. But Kaido as a character, he's not a meticulous individual. He's not a meticulous guy that's gonna make a plan to go step by step by step. If he was, then he would have already had his plan. He would have already done his plan. His plan was to die.
plot structure. Luffy falls off the Arc Maxim, and Enel flies off on it. Luffy loses to Lucci, so CP9 takes Robin to Eni's lobby. And Luffy has to recover from Magellan's poison, so Ace gets taken to Marineford. To keep this video short, finding all the other examples has been...
Right. I mean, this is pretty true. Things happening outside of Kaido, I guess I could see that.
Enel flies off on it. Luffy loses to Lucci, so CP9 takes Robin to Eni's lobby. And Luffy has to recover from Magellan's poison, so Ace gets taken to Marineford. To keep this video short, finding all the other examples has been left as an exercise for the viewer. It's not a rigid formula. We don't have time to discuss every case in this video, but every arc plays with this rule to fit its unique identity. Smaller arcs have smaller failures for less important villains. Sometimes it's not the villain's plan. Big Mom didn't plan on rampaging, but it's still a consequence for failing to kill her. And Dressrosa works differently because Doflamingo already conquered it, so he's reactive, not active. While Kairos does fail to...
Is that not the same for Kaido?
Rosa works differently because Doflamingo already conquered it, so he's reactive, not active.
Isn't Kaido reactive and not active?
While Kairos does fail to kill him, the birdcage is more a response to the heroes' success than their failure. Either way, it's the villain's agency bringing a new section of the plot structure. So if every major arc uses this tool for stakes, and Wano feels like it lacks stakes, then we need to take a close look at Luffy's failures during Wano.
I didn't ever feel like Wano lacked stakes though.
Luffy getting one-shot, the Scabbards versus Kaido, Luffy falling off the roof, and Luffy fake dying. Let's go through them in order. Luffy getting one-shot is my favorite. A loss that early and that hard was unprecedented, and set a tone for Luffy's hardest challenge ever.
Right.
And it put Luffy in jail, as Kaido wants to break the spirits of rookies, giving the plot a discrete subsection as a consequence. All of that is good, but it doesn't replace the need for a later failure. Normally there's build-up. Losing to a villain after spending half the arc working to beat them says more than losing after attacking on impulse. There was literally not much at stake here. This part still works, it shows us Kaido is a big deal, it just means we still need more later. Next, the Scabbards vs Kaido is also pretty good. It's like when Vivi, Wiper, or Law gets a shot against the villain. They're more invested in it than Luffy, and their failure is what justifies Luffy stepping in. But like with them, we don't seriously expect the Scabbards to win. Side characters versus the main villain has a predetermined outcome, which means no feeling of risk that Luffy might lose. The role of the failure has not been filled. Still, it's worth mentioning because this failure is followed by Kaido lifting Onigashima into the sky. A change in stakes. Kind of. More on that later. After the other four supernovas are gone, it's just Luffy and Kaido on the roof. And Luffy just learned Advanced Conqueror's Haki, letting him damage past Kaido's scales and fight like an emperor. And then, he gets knocked down. Off the island. Before we get to the structural issues, there's just a little thing that annoys me here. Why was this defeat off-screened? There's no mystery of what happened that gets answered later. Luffy was just weaker. Except when he comes back, he's not weaker anymore? The only things in between were that Luffy was just... Why was this defeat off... Before we get an emperor...
Which one was it again?
And then, he gets knocked down. Off the island. Before we get to the structural issues, there's just a little thing that annoys me here. Why was this defeat off-screened? There's no mystery of what happened that gets answered later.
Chat, does anybody know what episode that is? It wasn't off-screen in the anime? Oh, that's why I don't remember it. When Kaido was having the schizo fight? That did confuse me too.
Except when he comes back, he's not weaker anymore? The only things in between were that he ate food and got weaker. Except when he comes back...
So, he doesn't understand because he didn't watch the anime that this was all Kaido's delusion? Luffy never really got more powerful, right? Luffy didn't actually do this. Kaido was imagining it. Luffy was already off the island. Kaido was indeed schizophrenic.
He's not weaker anymore? The only things in between were that he ate food and got a ride from Momo, but he went from getting low diffed to seeming like he might win. This is the biggest jump in his ability to keep up with Kaido, but the actual power-ups of the fight, Advanced Conk and Awakening, were before and after the gap, not...
So in the manga, it happened that Luffy got knocked out and then just came back?
During it. Is it just Haki blooming? I'm fine with that concept as a background element, but when it's the one thing that can explain a huge, fast jump in power, it feels thin. I know this is just power scaling logic, nothing to do with the rest of the video, but I do think this kind of thing matters, and the story usually handles it better than this.
Did the schizo thing get confirmed?
Anyway, the actual issue with this failure is the lack of consequences. Luffy is out of Kaido's way, so Kaido kills Kinemon. Except, Kinemon lives with a borderline asshole, so no consequences there.
I will 1,000,000% agree. I hated the fact that Kinemon lived because Law didn't fully put him back together. I thought that was the biggest load of bullshit ever.
Well, Kinemon is just one guy. There's a battlefield of people for Kaido to attack. So next, wait, hold on. Someone new is entering the ring? It's Yamato with a steel chair. Here to kick ass, take names, and stall Kaido until Luffy's back. So nobody dies, and the battle doesn't change. You know, I like it when escalating stakes come with a change in location, whether it's a whole new island or as small as Crocodile going from the palace to the crypt. If we're physically closer to the villain's goal, the stakes are literally higher. Beyond that, changing scenery makes it feel like we're making progress. Inversely, if we're staying put, it doesn't feel like things are moving. And this isn't really a major issue. If everything else was working great,
not a major issue.
It wouldn't matter at all. But it feels like a wasted opportunity that Yamato fights Kaido in the same arena Luffy did. And when Luffy returns, it's still more roof piece. But there is one more failure.
I mean, I didn't mind it. The consequence is Momo lost his childhood. He had to age up to help Luffy. That's true. Momo lost 20 years of his life. That's a massive consequence. That's actually absolutely right, chat. And I did not even think about that. That's a pretty big consequence.
One more chance for consequences. Luffy seemingly dies due to Guernica's interference. Kaido's depression is great, and then he comes down to the battlefield to send out a couple of attacks that people react to. It's cool on paper. There are important character moments like Yamato inspiring Momo to keep fighting, but there's no consequences. If you took out Marco blocking a beam, nothing would change. The section is less than a chapter, it doesn't have room for a real plot beat. But Oda chose to make it that short. I don't know why he made that choice, but I do have guesses, and they tie into the deeper problem behind the last two failures. It's the big guy himself, Kaido. Failure needs consequences, so when Luffy loses...
The problem with Kaido? Nothing would change and Nami would be dead. Yeah, if he didn't block that shot, everybody's just dead.
Something
You're
bad.
right.
Ideally, something more unique than just killing people. Kinemon dying is a solution, but it's not the One Piece solution. If you think the series would be better with more deaths, valid. But when discussing how Wano could have matched the other arcs, it's about how it could do what they did, not do what another series would. The problem is, Kaido's motives don't open up possibilities. His main actionable goal is to start a world of violence. So what steps can he take?
His main actionable goal is dying, and because he can't die, he's just gonna fuck around until he dies. Right? This is not his main goal. His main goal is to die. The very first introduction scene of Kaido was him trying to kill himself, right? Like, right? His goal is not a world of violence. His goal is to perish.
That would bring that closer. I got nothing.
And he's gonna kill time by fucking around until then.
So what steps can he take during the raid that would bring that closer?
That's even worse in my opinion. That is the most unique anime villain I've ever seen. I have never seen somebody so unbelievably powerful in their world that they can't even get a good scrap to the death. That's their goal. Their goal isn't a fight. Their goal is to literally die. I don't need to have a villain coming out here with trying to debate my philosophy every 3 seconds. Sometimes it's just cool to just, I'm the fucking strongest thing that's ever lived. Fuck you. And that's Kaido's whole character.
I got nothing. It's a goal that enables speeches, not actions. There's nothing wrong with characterization meant to explore themes and foil other characters, but characterization that enables narrative, bring that closer. Actionable goal is to start a world of violence. So what steps can he take during the raid that would bring that closer? I got nothing. It's a goal that enables speeches, not actions. There's nothing wrong with characterization. Goal is to start wood. The problem is, Kaido's motives don't open up possibilities. His main actionable goal is to start a world of violence. So what steps can he take during the raid that would bring that closer? I got nothing. It's a goal that...
Wait, I've watched this 4 times and I can't believe what he just said.
So what steps can he take during the raid that would bring that closer? I got...
During the raid? Does he not... Wait, hold on, let me understand.
The problem is, Kaido's motives don't open up possibilities. His main actionable goal is to start a world of violence. So what steps can he take during the raid that would bring that closer?
That would bring that closer? His, like... Okay, is this the most easy answer ever? Or am I tripping? His goal was to start the world of violence if he kills Luffy, because Luffy was the Joy Boy. Or somebody was the Joy Boy. So his goal was... Also, he announced to the world to team up with Big Mom to get the One Piece. If he gets the One Piece, he gets whatever he wants. He gets to rush in an era of violence, a world of violence. The thing is it was dependent on him beating Luffy and the Straw Hats, beating all the samurai, beating everyone, and then teaming up with Big Mom and going and fulfilling that goal. If Luffy lost, he goes on to continue his goal. During the raid, though? No, because they're in the sky. He can't do shit in the sky, of course. Right? He doesn't need to... Exactly. He doesn't need to further his overall goal during the raid, which I guess is what his point is that he would like to see that. But for Kaido to do that, he has to find the One Piece. That's what Kaido would have to do. That's what he said his goal was to do, was to find the One Piece with Big Mom. Because he couldn't die, he's just, I'm gonna fuck around and do that, right? Also, there's so much more about Wano that we don't know. So once again, this is talking about an arc that isn't even fully concluded. Anyway, like I was saying, you better believe your ass that when we get further down the line in the One Piece manga and anime, Momonosuke and Yamato are coming back. Do y'all remember everything they said about Wano having to be drained and freed? Like, they're gonna have to completely destroy Wano for like the final arc or something. What if Kaido knew that and Kaido was trying to use whatever Wano was sitting on? Like, I think it's, I don't know what it is, like ancient weapon or something? What if he was waiting, trying to activate his plan, but he couldn't activate his plan because Luffy died? I mean, because Kaido died and Luffy beat him. I guess that's his point, is that Kaido should have been written differently, right? And that his plot could have moved on, but Kaido is such a final level villain that to do these question marks is literally like, get with Big Mom, find the One Piece, get the One Piece, find out whatever it is, and take over the world. Like, Kaido is beyond just these small little islands that like Doflamingo wants to take over. He's so far beyond anything any other villain has ever been up to this point. He took over Onigashima. He took over Wano completely. And he is the guy that everybody so far has been working for. Like Doflamingo, the amazing villain that you were talking about, an amazing story, that guy's entire plot story was for this guy. He is the final like boss of bosses. Or it's like if Roger was like, all right, I'm gonna achieve my goal now. Like, it is finding like the One Piece. So that's my final take on what he's saying here. I'm gonna go let Kaito out real quick.
I got nothing. It's a goal that enables speeches, not actions. There's nothing wrong with characterization meant to—
Speeches, not actions, because the actions would have to be so catastrophically dramatic that it would be world-changing.
To explore themes and foil other characters, but characterization that enables narrative opportunities is useful too, and often those narrative opportunities are the best way to explore a theme. Well, he also has the goal of dropping Onigashima on the Flower Capital,
right?
Which doesn't really accomplish anything besides being its own reward, but I guess it fits the vibes of a world of violence, so—
That feels a little nitpicky. I can't lie. Feels a little nitpicky, because wasn't he gonna do that to fuck over Orochi as well? Like, didn't he have a reason to do this? Like, because he's like, in my mind, I don't know if this is headcanon, it could be, but in my mind, he was like, yeah, fuck you, Orochi. I don't give a shit about you or any of your people. I'm in my final stage now. I'm about to start leaving Wano and going for world domination, starting with killing all these people and enslaving the rest that live, like he has been doing. This is the only place that is thriving with humanity, with humans, because Orochi, and create a new capital. Right, that's true. Killing the lives of thousands is not enough stakes. It feels like in his endeavor to prove himself right, he kind of shifted his view on everything that was going on to fit his narrative. Because you're saying there weren't enough stakes, but you're also complaining about him killing thousands. So which is it?
Doesn't really accomplish anything besides being its own reward, but I guess it fits the vibes of a world of violence.
Oh, it doesn't accomplish anything besides being its own reward? How about it creates stakes, like your video's about?
Doesn't really accomplish anything besides being its own reward, but I guess it fits the vibes of a world of violence. So does this one open up possibilities? For most of the battle, it doesn't. It's not like the birdcage, which changed the stakes for everyone on the island. Whether you're a samurai or a straw hat, you kind of have to do the same things whether Onigashima is on the ground or in the sky. Unless your name is Momonosuke. Momo has to master his powers and believe in himself to save the people. That's fine, and it's why Onigashima falling fits the same structural role as the bomb in Alabasta.
True.
Momo is in Vivi's role. But in Alabasta, the bomb was on top of Crocodile's multi-step plan to find Pluton. Crocodile's goal gave him things to do rather than enter the battle. Kaido doesn't have any other plans, not any that work for the plot structure like this, and lifting Onigashima is a passive effect. When Luffy falls, nothing changes with it. It's happening before and happening after. Let's be clear.
Just because it's not exactly identical to the other arcs does not mean it didn't have stakes. That's just like, that's literally Kaido's character. Like, it's okay to have that as a character. It's okay to not have a copy and paste, right?
Not any that work for the plot structure like this. And lifting Onigashima is a passive effect. When Luffy falls, nothing changes with it. It's happening before and happening after. Let's be clear. The narrative conveying stakes is a different thing from there being stakes. Onigashima— Let's be clear. The narrative conveying stakes is a different thing from there being stakes.
But there were stakes created, actual stakes, like Onigashima falling on the capital, but that was a problem because it didn't serve a purpose. But it did because it's what Kaido wanted to do, and Kaido's going to do what Kaido wants to do, so that's his purpose.
Onigashima falling on the capital would be...
And that indeed is a real stake, and not just a stake created by a narrative, because a narrative would just say this is happening, but actual stakes would be this is going to happen, which is exactly what was going to happen if Kaido was not stopped. Which so would create stakes, right?
Me as a Beast Pirate sympathizer. But the plan doesn't progress when Luffy loses, so the story doesn't emphasize the connection between me as a Beast Pirate sympathizer. But the Onigashima falling on the capital would be horrific, so you don't need to cancel me as a Beast Pirate sympathizer. But the plan doesn't progress when Luffy loses, so the story doesn't emphasize the connection between failure and consequence. Kaido's lack of goals leaves him with nothing to do other than join the battle, but most characters are occupied with their own subplots. So either Kaido starts clubbing samurai, which would be an awkward, inelegant plot section, or we use the one available character.
If Kaido started clubbing samurai, that shit would be fitting and funny. Not funny, but it would be fitting.
Clubbing samurai, which would be an awkward, inelegant plot section.
Awkward, inelegant? It would be awkward and inelegant.
Or we use the one available character. I wish a character with as much potential as Yamato had a more interesting role than stalling Kaido, but I get why the story needed that, because otherwise Kaido would break the arc. But instead of breaking it, is there a way we can fix it? While I was writing this video, I had the idea that we could take out Luffy's second-to-last loss. It lacked consequences anyway, since Yamato was stalling, so why keep it? Well, it leads to a few different problems, like Yamato needing a new role or the pacing of the fight, but the killing blow was that Luffy needs to be down there by Momo's side as Momo learns to fly. Damaging that relationship would hurt the arc more than my idea would fix it. Plot structure is complicated in simple stories, and we're talking the biggest One Piece arc ever.
Right.
A small change can lead to contradictions, which require even more changes, and that chain keeps going.
Right.
Making it all work is a full-time job even when you aren't on a manga artist's schedule. I might be able to diagnose a plot issue, or at least give it my best shot, but solving it in a way that works out in practice, there's gonna be
diagnose it is crazy.
Things I didn't consider. I'm not saying that we can't suggest ideas. If you have an interesting proposal for something Kaido could have done instead of fighting Yamato, I want to know. I think there's a lot of potential with the concept of him breaking the spirits of rookies.
I hate talking about the what-ifs of a character's fundamental writing. Kaido's fundamental writing since he's been introduced is exactly who he is now. Like, everything we know about Kaido fits in exactly in who he is. This is Oda's idea of Kaido. It has always been, ever since he was introduced.
If an idea seems obvious, there's probably reasons Oda didn't want to use it, and it would take a lot of work to flesh it out into viability. It is easy for something to sound good as I didn't want to use it.
I like seeing at least the sketches of Oda.
Take a lot of work to flesh it out into viability. It is easy for something to sound good as an idea, so I want you to take my suggestion with a big grain of salt. I think it would have been cool if the Straw Hats had to defend against Kaido while...
Well, I'm taking your suggestion with a grain of salt, but an even bigger grain of salt, I'm taking your entire problem with Kaido. But even though Oda has always written Kaido consistently, Oda has never given anybody any reason for Kaido to be anything other than the world's strongest creature. He was literally introduced as that, falling thousands of feet from the sky. We should watch a Kaido character analysis. He's a tough character to fully understand when he's spread over hundreds of episodes. Yeah, I don't think I'm the end-all, be-all of knowledge by any means. This is why I always refer to chat, because I feel like hundreds of people conglomerately is definitely smarter than one, you know?
I know I'm not the first one to suggest this idea.
I don't know.
Cool if the Straw Hats had to defend against Kaido while Luffy was fake dead. I know I'm not the first one to suggest this idea, but their subplots were all resolved, so they were all available. The crew could show their unity and their unbreakable belief in Luffy through their actions, through putting their lives on the line for him. It would tie into the theme of how a crew carries on the will of their leader, interwoven with how a leader sacrifices themselves for their crew. And it would give us a distinct subsection of the plot, a change in stakes that would not have happened if Luffy hadn't failed. I don't know if it's the solution, but I would have liked to have seen it happen in the story. Stakes are about showing the reader...
I would have liked to see it happen too, but realistically, Kaido just one-shots 90% of the Straw Hats, so the only person that could live, maybe, is Zoro, right? Sanji doesn't have Conqueror's Haki. What's it called? ACOG?
That failure has consequences. You'll never believe that a villain can kill people if they don't, and you'll never believe that...
At this point, he wants to see another Kaido, another fight. Yeah, he's like, honestly, if Wano just had a different villain with different motives and we had different fights with like then I think I would enjoy it. Then it would be pretty good.
That it matters for the hero to lose if it doesn't. Luffy falling off Onigashima hit hard in the moment, but it's hollow, and that affects how the story feels.
Again, in the anime, maybe this is fair for the manga, but in the anime, that's not true, right?
If failure doesn't matter, then it feels like failure didn't happen. If it feels like failure didn't happen, then it feels like the Straw Hats overcame their greatest challenge without struggle, as though it was as easy as Fishman Island. They did struggle, but
Without struggle?
storytelling isn't just about what happens, but how it's shown. The narrative structure doesn't emphasize failure, so the risk doesn't feel real and the arc feels incomplete. Like it's missing something, because it's telling us there was a struggle that doesn't feel like it was there. The struggles and failures on the road to victory are not just for the mechanical logic of how the fights are won. The drive to keep fighting, to win for the sake of those you care about and those you have to protect, no matter who you're up against, that is one of the most important emotions in One Piece. And we experience
No matter who you're up against, including the world's strongest creature that one-shot Luffy, right? Like, he knows that. He said that earlier.
protect no matter how the fights are won. The drive to keep fighting, to win for the sake of those you care about and those you have to protect,
And Luffy literally did this, though.
no matter who you're up against, that is one of the most important emotions in One Piece.
Luffy did that.
And we experience that feeling through how winning and losing are built into the plot structure.
Luffy did that.
The emotion has weight because there's a risk, and
Wano did
making
that.
that risk feel real is what stakes are for.
Wano did that.
Wano is full of incredible characters, themes, and emotions.
Right.
But it's a lot easier to care about all of those if you care about the fact that the main characters are trying to do something. That they are putting their lives on the line to win. Caring
Right.
about the struggle is the doorway to caring
Right.
about everything else.
Right.
And for Wano, I just wish Oda gave us the key.
Everything he said, I feel like Wano just did. Maybe I'm a Wano glazer. Maybe I don't get the point. Maybe I misread it. Let's see a few comments. Let's see what under his video. Let's see what they say. Of course, Wano didn't have any stakes. Is that how you spell stakes in that way? Yeah, of course Wano didn't have any stakes. The stakes are on Virgo's chin, brother. Wano had a pretty complex interwoven structure that makes it so fixing one issue would narratively break the arc in two. I'm not Oda, so I'm simply unable to tackle these problems because that would mean making a new, slightly different Wano, which a normal person like me failed tremendously at. And I think he's also implying that most people would like that. Because of the Kinemon fake out, I didn't even blink when Ashura and Izo died. I thought to myself, another fake out, goddamn it, Oda, and just moved on. Low key, same. Low key, I kind of agree. I think the issue with Wano is that it felt like Oda treated it as another training arc instead of the climax of a long saga. What? I think other arcs with stakes made you really invested in the antagonist, typically by making you both fear them and love to hate them. And Crocodile, Lucci, Doffy. Wano had two primary antagonists, Orochi and Kaido. Orochi was despicable, couldn't be taken seriously. Kaido was a real threat, didn't have character for the audience to enjoy hating him. I agree about the Orochi part. Orochi had literally nothing even close to redeeming, so he was despicable and could not be taken seriously. Literally nobody liked him. Kaido was a character. I feel like people just don't like what Kaido is, but Kaido the character, I've already talked about it before in this very video, so I'm gonna repeat myself. I think it's important to consider how everyone knows Luffy's gonna defeat Kaido. Everyone knows Zoro's gonna beat up King and Sanji. You know what I mean? And for that matter, Luffy's gonna beat up Crocodile. I think what makes stakes in a story like this is when you don't know how they're going to do it. Compare the bomb in Alabasta to Onigashima. When you hear about the bomb, nobody even knows where it could be. And then once they figure it out, nobody knows how they could get up there and how injured they are. Then nobody knows how they're going to and so on. But the island, you know practically immediately that Omomo is going to overpower Kaido's clouds and carry it. I think this is a lot of what effective failure brings to the table. The question of, so if Luffy lost last time, what can he possibly do here? But you could say this about any plot point that involves any character like majorly dying. Like the second you see Doflamingo's bird cage coming, you know immediately that not every main character is going to die, right? I mean, you understand that. So it's like if you're going to take that away from Wano, don't take it away from Wano and take it away from Oda and start talking about how you don't like Oda's writing, because that is Oda's writing through and through. Kaido is kind of underdeveloped. That is why so many people cried out for a backstory and flashback. But how many backstories and flashbacks do we need? How many do we need of, oh, this character had a bad backstory and now he's bad? Okay, we did get one. Kaido doesn't need to be everything that you want him to be. Oda wrote him. Interesting stuff of him, his knowledge of Joy Boy being suicidal, but without the connecting tissue, we are left with a big, angry, strong guy. Comparing him to a character like Arlong, they have a lot in common, but Arlong is much more closely connected to the arc that he is in and has an integral part of Nami's character and backstory. Kaido has an integral part of Wano's entire character every character in Wano and every character in Wano's backstory. He has that. He literally has this. An integral part of Nami's backstory and character. Kaido has that. And what do you mean Arlong is and then comment, but Arlong is more closely connected to the arc? What the fuck do you mean Arlong is more closely connected to the arc? Kaido took over Wano! Kaido was just as involved in his arc as Arlong. He is the embodiment of all her woes. So is Kaido! He tortured Momo. He held him like a burger and threw him. Someone that needs to be defeated for her to grow as a person and rise above her horrific past and saving her village in the process. Just like Momo, like we have our characters now. Wano is underdeveloped too. We are almost asked to care about people that the story itself refused to characterize. Dropping Onigashima just feels like a new time bomb. You don't care that Onigashima is being dropped on the people. You don't care about the people because they're shitty already anyway. They're all Orochi's villains, civilians. They're all of Orochi's like aristocrats and rich people. Everybody else is enslaved. You're not supposed to care about those people. You're supposed to just care they're gonna die and that he's murdering people and is gonna enslave everyone. I don't really understand. This just feels like an insane amount of like not only nitpicking, it's just wrong. Like you're comparing Arlong to Kaido when they're like so similar. And then people will praise Arlong and oh, well, it's Nami. Well, maybe because you have 1,000 more episodes with Nami, you fucking love that character. But you should love Momo too. You've been with him since the time skip. But nah, everything that we've seen with Momo, I guess you don't care about. Everything you've seen with the Kinemon, I guess you don't care about. I guess it really didn't hit you as hard because maybe, I don't know why. It doesn't make any sense. If we are supposed to care, but do we really? I mean, I did. I didn't want thousands of people to die. It'd be horrific, but not emotional. It feels pointless as the bad guy's plan. Why is that the approach? What could Kaido possibly gain from killing his own enslaved subjects? Is he stupid and evil? That's boring. How about the fact that he is leaving the island? Like, did we not watch the same story that Kaido was gonna leave Onigashima and Wano and take over the world and get the One Piece with Big Mom? He doesn't need these slaves forever. He doesn't care about power and having slaves forever and money forever. He doesn't care about the long-term effects. He cares about what the fuck he wants to do now. And they don't understand Kaido, so then they have all these problems with Wano and all these problems. Well, then why is Kaido doing this? Is it just because he's evil? Why is he killing his own people? Obviously, he didn't watch this fucking show. He's getting with Big Mom to take the One Piece, to fuck around because he can't find out. That's Kaido's whole life, is fucking around and not finding out. So this time was a very big deal that he did find the fuck out. I don't know. It just feels like any time that you have these massive, massive, massive issues with something, especially something like One Piece and Oda and somebody's own art, somebody's own story, you're going to tell them to write a character in their world how you want that character to be? I don't know. It just seems at this point kind of, looking for a word. It seems kind of arrogant and egotistical to think that you could do better. Oh yeah, I could write better. How about Kaido's entire beginning? Who he is as a character. We don't know shit about him. He's a motherfucker that fell from the sky thousands of feet. You don't need to know anything about him. You need to know he's strong, he's not very good, and he's been here to fuck around. And that is his whole character. And it seems like people just can't accept that. But I don't know. That is my take.